Welcome to Finding the Modern Man podcast. Join me, Peter Kiricosta, your health and performance expert and self-leadership coach, as myself and my guests discuss and uncover what it means to be a man in today's society, helping you optimize physical, mental, and emotional health in order to create a life with purpose and passion in the changing world that we live in. Welcome back to another episode of Finding the Modern Man podcast. Today, I have a special guest with us, and we're going into a bit of a different platform or area of being a man and different part of society. We're looking at what it's like to be a man or person living with various types of disabilities. I feel that this is an area that really gets misunderstood and not enough concise information about it, not enough person-to-person information about it, like real-life examples. We all know about the NDIS at the moment, and there's various stuff we hear and experience with that. But today I've got my good friend, John with us. Welcome, John. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Pete. It's really exciting to be here. I really appreciate the time.
Awesome, man. So could you please give the audience a bit of a background? Because obviously on this, we can only just see your shoulders up. Could you please give us a bit about your background and your life?
Yeah, well, I was born in 1981 in a small country town called Stanthorpe, and the doctor who delivered me and the medical professionals at the time had no idea about this disability called spina bifida and hydrocephalus. And spina bifida, it affects approximately, I believe, 1 in 10,000 people, could even be more. And as I said, in a small country town in 1981, there was very little knowledge of it. It was 1981 actually happened to be the International Year of People with a Disability. So that was the year I happened to be born. Bit auspicious, I suppose. And so, yeah, I then was transported up to Brisbane. The doctor who delivered me noticed a little black mark on the lumbar part of my spine, which he couldn't identify. And so they sent me out via an ambulance to Brisbane. And within the first day of my life, I was getting surgery to cover over the lesion over my spinal cord. So essentially, spina bifida is where the nerves of the spinal cord through the neural tube are exposed. The neural tube doesn't close normally, and the nerves are exposed. And obviously, that creates damage at the level around your spinal cord. Very commonly, probably 90%, I would say, of people with spina bifida also have hydrocephalus. So that is an excess of cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. And that is obviously also the result of the neurological damage that's caused through the exposure of nerves through that lesion of spina bifida. So yeah, that's me, and I'm now 42. Yeah, and about to move next year into my very first apartment, thanks to the NDIS, which you've already touched on, the NDIS.
Yeah, they are doing some really great things, which is awesome. I know there are people that take advantage of it, some of the providers, some of the people accessing it, but there are some great things that the NDIS can help people with. And I feel like that's a really underrated thing. So just touching on that part.
Yep.
How are they helping people become more independent? And
in a myriad of ways. Before the NDIS, my first plan in the NDIS came about in 2017. And prior to that, the rollout had occurred nationwide. It started to occur around 2013. And my first plan here in Brisbane, obviously, in 2017. And prior to that, I had zero funded support whatsoever. The disability support services prior to the NDIS were all state-based and all what they call block funding. So disability organisations throughout the state were funded directly by the government. And so they got their funding. And that meant that people with disability were quite limited by having to access those specific services that were being funded on a state level by the government. The funding model completely changed and was turned on its head with the NDIS. And so it became a model of individualized funding where the money came directly to people with disability via their NDIS plan. And so I had a meeting in 2016 with an NDIS planner. I had to highlight what my short, medium, and long-term goals were. I highlighted what I guess, the most challenging days of my life looked like so I could paint a
Mm,
picture of the kinds of supports, physical supports that I would be requiring. And it was a complex meeting and a complex process. But at the end of it, you come out with a plan that provides funding in various categories that help to boost your access to any organization that will provide, say, continence supplies or disability specific supplies or domestic support, maybe a cleaner. So I now avail myself of a cleaner who comes once a week and helps me do all the things that I personally physically couldn't do, like, washing my floors and, cleaning my bathroom and, sweeping, mopping, all that sort of stuff, putting a fitted sheet on the bed, which is pretty difficult.
that's hard enough at the best times.
When you're in a low seated position, you really
Yeah.
need that height to spread that sheet out. And that kind of thing became super apparent to me. And I'm thinking, yeah, I think I need, some support with regards
Yeah.
to those sorts of things. So, hanging my clothes out on a line and things like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, do you reckon like with the mopping, we could like engineer something to go at the back of a wheelchair? So it's kind of like a plow, like a field plow, but a mop.
absolutely. Like
I
that's the
reckon we
thing.
should
That's the
engineer
other thing with
that.
the NDIS is that you could create a business that is an NDIS provider where you could sell stuff like that. So,
We should do it. We should
there,
do
there,
that.
there's a good business plan right there.
I can't believe we haven't thought of this sooner. But jokes aside, what was it like for you growing up? Because you touched on the fact that when you were born, the doctor had no idea about spina bifida or hydrocephalus.
Mhm.
What was it like coming through school? Because like we're talking about when we were kids,
Yeah.
when it's very rare that someone had even an allergy, let alone a disability.
80s and 90s. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What was it like coming through then for you?
well, I was going to say, and I'm super grateful. And I was going to say, I'm very lucky, but I think grateful is the better term because it wasn't entirely dependent on luck. It was dependent on what my parents at the time did by way of the advocacy that they would generate in the primary school that I attended at St. Joseph's at Nunda. And it was because of their advocacy, their efforts, that I was able to attend sort of mainstream primary schooling. I started out in a disability specific school, which provided a bit more physical therapies. That was called Montrose. In fact, at the time, it's interesting, terminology's changed so much, over the years. And at the
Yeah.
time, Montrose in the 80s was called Montrose Home for Crippled Children.
Oh God.
Yeah,
What?
that's what it was
At
called
that
because
time.
terms like crippled, handicap was a term that even is still used in the US.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but and then obviously there's more derogatory terms that people apply, but those terms were just kind of normalized in that era. That was quite typical of that era.
Mm, mm.
So, but I do remember my year. I had a year there at Montrose, and it was very physical therapy based, and it was also I had my first year of I had kindergarten there. No, sorry, I had kindergarten, at a mainstream kindergarten, and then I went to Montrose for a year, and then I went to St. Joseph's and basically repeated the first year one again. But yeah, again, that was all my years at St. Joseph's. St. Joseph's were as wonderful as they were, primarily through a few different factors. My parents' advocacy for me to participate in mainstream schooling. So they were the only ones that pushed for having a taxi service. Yeah, because the way that the way that the Queensland government was providing access to taxis, it was
Yeah.
s- specific to a certain school. And so,
Right.
yeah. And so my parents felt like, well, that's a bit unfair having to restrict me to only going to a
Mm,
certain specific school so I could get
mm,
access to the taxi. So they pushed and lobbied Catholic education and the Queensland government, and helped me to get, the taxi every day to and from home to St. Joseph's. And then also the other great thing that about my primary schooling, and this is, for me personally, I know that other people have different experiences, but I happened to just come through a grade where everyone was super supportive, and everyone was like, all of my friends were really supportive, really kind. I would really look forward to going to actually looking forward to going to school, because I'd look forward to going to school a half hour early, because my group of friends would play a game of touch footy, and just instinctively they would modify the game. Um,
oh, wow.
there was no template. There was no, this is how games can be modified to disability. They just
Mm,
saw
mm,
me as a friend of theirs and thought, well, we want John to participate. Let's
yeah.
figure out a way of modifying the game so that John can participate in our every morning game of touch footy. And
Yeah.
so, and I got really, really like invested in that, and it was a really great camaraderie. And yeah, so I
Mm.
had a really fantastic primary school.
So with that, just
Yep.
on that, it's amazing. I just want to touch on like how kids are so adaptive, and you see the
Yes.
nature of human nature where they want to include or they want to get their friends in, and they see beyond a wheelchair in your case, or for some other kid, it would have been another disability, like family friends of ours down in the Riverina in New South Wales. Similar thing. Parents were such advocates for their son that had cerebral palsy, and just getting a lot more awareness in the community, really good with him. And the people around there, like it shows that, especially early on in life, kids are so accepting. They don't see, they don't care about race or disability, ability, whatever it is.
Mhm.
They're just so accepting. But then there's a certain point in time where, or a certain age or stage of development where that starts to change. And
Mhm.
we start to see whether it's misunderstandings, prejudice, or, just people making assumptions.
Mhm.
Because these kids
Preconceptions.
just,
We start to recognize and notice superficial differences.
yeah, yeah, which it is superficial because, we've known each other for years. And this is one of the things that I really love about this kind of topic as well. You and I bonded on so many similarities
Mhm.
and common grounds. We're both from a Southern Italian background. Parents are similar age. Our dads were both in the police force. Some of our favorite movies, music. So we've always bonded on these deeper connections and our values in life, what we want, our goals are similar. Our value system is very similar. We've always bonded on this, and this is something I've always really appreciated about our friendship over the years.
Likewise.
And we've often had these parallels, like you and I have spoken on the phone, and it's like we'll be going through similar things, whether it's a personal issue, a family issue, whatever it is. It's like spina bifida has got nothing to do with it.
No, no, exactly right. Our
And
circumstances might be different, but yet the themes of the emotional content and the value and the values and the themes of what we're going through, we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And what so then, like, at what point in time did you find there may have been, like, a change in people's attitude or the way they approached you in life? Did you have, like, a certain part of whether it was schooling or uni where that kinda happened?
This is interesting, and this is where, I mean, I'll touch on my sort of life now is I do quite a lot of work voluntarily reading with primary school age children, ages 5 to 6, prep age. And I have, 5 nieces and nephews. Children are a very, very integral part of my values. And I feel that that's probably also informed by the really positive experiences that we've just touched on now about the way children related to me and how I now want to create that nurturing, positive set of values in children of that age so
Mm,
that they grow up to become adults that don't have those preconceptions, that don't see or don't place undue emphasis on
mm, mm,
superficial differences, that don't have those prejudices. And I found that the time in my life where I felt that those preconceptions, assumptions, prejudices were starting to become impinging on me personally were not at all to do with my friends, like my friends my age,
mm.
children
Yeah.
my age. They were actually to do with some of the teachers in my high school. Yeah. So again, adults who made a series of assumptions about
Mhm.
my abilities, my capabilities, my
Yeah.
whether I would have a negative effect on other people.
Yeah.
So I was actually being restricted, say in shop 8
Yeah.
metalwork.
Oh,
The teacher basically said, "Oh, I can't have John in my class because he will be a danger to to himself and to others."
right.
Well, it was an assumption. It was an
Yeah.
assumption that because of what he saw of me just being in a wheelchair, well, then therefore I would be completely incapable of handling any of the equipment or being able to do any of the assessments or any of the tasks. Whereas the interesting thing, and this ties exactly into even my university and my work experience. And it wasn't all the teachers in primary school. Some of the teachers also had a different attitude where they would provide for my disability. They would
Mhm.
enable me to be on a level playing field to everyone else so that
Yeah.
physical ability to as wherever possible became a moot point. So
Yeah, okay.
I was given like no ability to in high school to take a bit of extra time, take some breaks because with hydrocephalus being a cognitive disability, it
Mhm.
affects the frontal lobes. So it affects especially what's called executive functioning. So it affects the brain's ability to sequence, plan, time manage, and organize. So for me, that meant that with neuroplasticity, we know more about how the brain can learn.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so my brain is and was and still is until the end of my days able to adapt and learn, but it just requires external support and it just requires
Okay.
external adaptation. So I would get my exam papers just blown up a bit more so that there wasn't too many words clotted on the one sheet of paper. I would get a little extra time so that I could have a 5-minute break every half hour, things like that, because if you apply the same standard to every human being, well then if one human being has different needs to another human being, but you apply the same standards, well then
Mm,
the human being with different needs will struggle,
mm,
and it will be an undue and unfair kind of struggle because
mhm,
it's a different set of needs that that person has. So it's just an attitude adjustment of adapting the
mhm.
environment. That's all it comes down to, is adapting in the environment.
Actually, very interesting that you mentioned that because I know that it's about 60% of workplace modifications required for people with various disabilities actually cost nothing.
Yeah.
And then typical costs of when they are needed is only what, around $500 or something. It's like
Mm,
almost not much more than a CCAD, than
yeah.
replacing a CCAD.
Yep.
And so, like, can you please explain what some of these modifications might be? Because we got people paying attention to this and listening that are in either management positions, owners of businesses. So, like, how can we open their mind to show just what is or isn't required and how they could tap into a whole other workforce, people that actually want to work, which is something we'll get into soon
Mhm,
about the
mhm.
benefits in the workplace. But yeah, what are some of these modifications typically that you've seen?
Look,
No.
I think maybe addressing the elephant in the room is
Mm,
fears that employers have around employing a person with a disability. One of those fears could be, oh my goodness, there's going to be a huge expense in capital works to, change the design of the building, and it's not until you actually sit with the person with a disability and
mm,
actually ask them, what are your specific needs, that you realize that more often than not, it won't ever require major capital works. Um, Physical access to a building, if there's a step yay big,
yeah.
could just require a very small portable ramp that you
Yeah.
can put there at the beginning of the day. It costs next to nothing. You could even fashion it yourself potentially.
Yeah. 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 It's a very simple piece
Yeah,
of
exactly.
equipment, isn't it?
For people maybe with vision impairment, there are assistive technologies these days are remarkable.
Mm,
You know, our computers and our phones have apps that enlarge text, that enable
mm,
text to speech. Or there are a certain set of legislations that are enacted for website design, which are readily available on the internet, really clear and easy for employers to look at how their websites are designed so that they can address, say, for example, again, a person with a vision impairment, color contrasts, things like that, so that,
yeah,
uh,
that's also good for like people with uh, dyslexia,
exactly,
color
dyslexia,
coding things, being able,
exactly.
and like you mentioned before, with the enlarged text as well. So it's not cluttered, it's more easily, you can separate things easily. And yeah,
Mm.
so continue.
Yeah, and the guidelines are there, readily
Mm,
available. They provide a kind of a roadmap of how to set up a website design that complies with the legislation, but more
yeah.
than that, actually provides the access that is equitable across the entire workforce, regardless of ability. And again, that flows into what we can talk about with regards to, if you do have a diverse and equitable workforce that welcomes and enables, really empowers people with disability. There are so many attributes that people with disabilities bring to the workforce.
Yeah, explain that. Explain
Yeah,
some.
well, there are so many personal attributes, but also it also equates to financial. for businesses as well. And I think that's something that
Yeah.
is a bit of a misunderstood, unexplored concept for employers, that people with a disability, the changes that may need to go into restructuring a role, or that may need to go into providing levels of access, physical
Yeah.
and otherwise, are far outweighed by the enhancement of productivity
Mm.
and the reduction in staff turnover. Because a person with a disability, yeah, sorry, you were saying?
No, 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 no. Go. A
Yeah,
person with disability.
yeah, I was just saying a person with a disability has a willingness to work. The statistics highlight that people with disabilities are far less likely to take sick days than able-bodied or non-disabled people.
Yeah.
Um,
You don't have to be politically correct on this show. That's all
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
You're the one with a disability. You can say whatever you like.
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's interesting, that I think that's something that employers may not quite realize, or may not understand, is that, yeah, a person with a disability is much more willing and will take less sick days. There's
Mm.
a strong sense of loyalty, a strong sense of responsibility. People with a disability are commonly put into a box and defined by lack and
Mm.
what people believe they can't do. So
Yeah.
that when people with a disability, when we are given the opportunities to show what we can achieve, what we can do, what we can bring, and what we can contribute, and how that's valuable and worthwhile, well, then there's a much stronger sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
We're very aware of, this is a great, our opportunities are a great responsibility
Mm.
to highlight what we can achieve, what we
Yeah.
can do, what we can bring to the table. And, we bring resilience from our personal lived experience.
Mm.
Well, in my case, 20 odd surgeries and medical interventions and hospital stays. It actually, to me, disability provides a lot of gifts.
Yeah.
I assume that I would say that it's a curse, or there's so many negatives about it, but I actually look at it
Mm.
from the point of view of, I am a more resilient person. I am a more adaptable person. I'm a more humorous person. It actually, that's something that is undervalued, is that when you go through disability and you talk to anyone with disability, there's a dark sense of humor that comes through, and
Yeah.
we all need that in life. We all need a sense of humor. And in
Yeah.
terms of like staff morale, having a person with a disability throwing a few jokes in about their lived experience, it helps to sort of open up the channels of communication, the lines of communication. It helps to break the ice, and it helps to highlight that, the thing that connects us is our values, things like humor,
Mm. Mm.
resilience.
I see quite that. Sorry. I see that a lot as well. All those things that you say, like I see a lot of resilience just in knowing you for a number of years and
Mm,
explaining to me a lot of what you've been through over the years. It's like that you just keep looking at ways to bounce back. You keep looking at other avenues to get past hurdles.
mm,
Like
mm,
you're more willing than most people I've ever come across to look for an answer and find a way instead of just wanting the world to change for you, as a lot of people's attitude gets.
mm,
No, they just want the world to change for them because they have this sense of entitlement that's very common these days in the workplace as well. Like all those things you were saying about that loyalty, less sick days taken, that's more productive for a workplace.
mm,
And I think as well, when you've got that example of someone with work ethic, it can really rub off onto other people
Mm.
and put things into a bit of perspective where it's like, come on, Jimmy, John here is way more productive than you. What are you whinging about, dude? You're hungover. There's, you don't need a sickie,
Mm.
because like sickies cost Australia $44 billion over
Mhm.
that a year. Over 44 billion a year just because people can't be asked going to work.
Yeah,
And this really infuriates me when we've got, what were the stats? 4.4 million people in Australia living with a
that's right.
disability.
18% or 1 in 6 people. So if you
Yeah,
see a room of 6 people, 1 has a disability, and that can be a
yeah.
hip disability, like a cognitive disability. It could be
Mm,
autism. It could be sensory disorder, or it could be something visible like a wheelchair or a mobility aid. But
yeah,
1 in 6 people, 18% of Australia, 4.4 million people
yeah.
have a disability.
2.1 million are working age, and there's an untapped market of 1 million or more that are seeking employment.
Absolutely.
That's
Underemployment is
yeah.
a massive issue for people
And
with
over the
disabilities.
last few years, with everything that's happened in society, most industries are crying out for staff because people who were working before don't know where they've gone. But a lot of industries are crying out for staff because people just don't want to work, or they
Mm.
only want to work a minimal amount of hours, or there are all these reasons and stories about why
Their own
they don't
terms,
be
yeah.
in the work. Yeah. So why not, if you're listening to this and you're in a position, why not look to tap that market of people that are going to put in the effort, that will have work ethic and actually contribute, and not
Mm.
just think about themselves, but think about the organization and their role within that, rather than just rocking up to get paid.
Absolutely.
Okay?
And what you said before, and I appreciate that you said this about myself, the ability to kind of look for, well, how can I solve the struggles that I'm going through? How can I see it from a different perspective? How can I see it from a different
Mm,
lens? All of that stuff is are attributes that people with disabilities bring to workforces and bring to jobs.
yeah.
And that's really like in terms of productivity and value to employers, something that is it's immeasurable because when a person with a disability sees a challenge or a problem, we come across challenges and problems in our own day-to-day lives. And so we possess a different perspective and
Mm,
not just the perspective, but we possess the ability to seek a different perspective,
yeah.
the actual willingness to seek that perspective and
Yeah.
and not let those quote unquote problems in
Mm,
a task, in an assignment, in a job become a block, become a brick wall. We find
yeah.
ways through brick walls, around brick walls, over
Yeah.
brick walls. um,
Right.
and as far as like I was talking about before with staff turnover,
Yeah.
it would interest employers out there to know that when a person um, has to train up somebody else because of staff turnover,
Mm.
the cost to that organization is on average 1.5 times that person's salary.
Oh, genius.
Hmm.
That's massive.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, why wouldn't you want to be looking for someone who has work ethic, that wants to pursue progress,
It won't
that
take
wants
as
to
many
actually
sick
better
days.
themselves, wants to contribute, will actually turn up.
Hmm. We'll
That's
stick. We'll stick
brilliant.
there. We'll stick there for the long haul.
Yeah, yeah. And just on that as well, like you're saying, sticking to the long haul, I'd imagine that, well, not just imagine, I know from knowing you, but for many other people living with disabilities out there, and to put into perspective for the people listening and watching, that would also give you quite a different perspective of relationships, family life, and what you'd actually bring to the table compared to most other people. So, like, tell me how you view, and tell the audience how you view relationships, family, and what those like gifts that you've acquired
Mm.
through your life experience and how that plays out, and you see that playing out.
Yeah, well, I guess I touched on how children are a really integral part of my values, and I'm very blessed that I've got 5 beautiful nieces and nephews, and, I'm very close particularly to my sister's 2 boys. I see them quite a lot and am very involved in their life, and because of the nature of my work, I have some time that I can put into. I've got a great sort of work-life balance, where I can invest my energy and my time into what my values are, which is being a role model for my nephews, highlighting to them some of those values that I would equally bring to the workforce, but also to my family life and also within my friendship circles. Those human qualities of resilience, of humor, of connection, of love, gratitude. It's very important to me to provide that for, my nephews. And, if it's on the cards one day, finding the right person, having children of my own, or whether they have children in their life, also being able to share some of those, who I am and what I am and what I feel and what I represent in terms of my values
Yeah.
to those relationships. It's very, very important to me.
And I'd assume as well that when the crap hits the fan in life, which it does in everyone's life, right? We're
Yeah.
human. That's going to happen regardless
Yeah.
of who you are or what your life circumstances are. I'd imagine as well when when you're when you're a person living with some kind of disability, you've gone through the adversity, you've got that resilience, all those qualities you're talking about. When the crap hits the fan in life, you'd actually be a much better person to be in the trenches with when like life is at a low point and things are going wrong, crap hits the fan. It's like, yeah, man, been through adversity my entire life.
Yeah. Again, it's all about that perspective. It's all about training your brain. And I think I've had just a lot of experience, really,
Mm.
and a lot of practice training my brain to see different perspectives. Because when you're in the midst of adversity, there's that saying, and look, none of this is specific to me. None of
Yeah.
this none of this is to say that, you know, I've got greater ability to handle shit than anyone else does, because we all have fear. We all have anxiety. We all have, to some degree, we all have moments where the shit hits the fan, or we feel depressed, we feel down, or we have these ambitions that become frustrated by external forces and factors, money and other people's, lack of willingness or whatever it may be. But there's that really great saying about fear, that fear can be fear everything and run, or
Yeah. Yeah.
face everything and rise.
Oh, that's a powerful saying. Hey.
And I love that. Face everything and rise. Because if
Oh,
we can approach our challenges, and our challenges are, there's a duality to challenge.
yeah.
Challenge can be aspirational, things that we want to achieve. And my aspirations are no different than anyone's aspirations. Like
Mm.
the if we, the common perspective when it comes to disability is that it's in two camps. The medical model,
Mhm.
meaning this could happen to you, surgeries, negativity, all that medical issues.
Mm.
It's the aspirational, and I think it's wonderful that there are incredible Paralympians that we can aspire to in our society. That there's so many, vast majority, that are in the middle and that have the same vision, dreams, goals, aspirations, wants, and needs as any other human being. And so, in that sense, I'm, got the same goal of going through mainstream schooling, going through university, going into the
Mm.
workforce, having my degree, going to the workforce, hopefully maybe finding the right person, living independently as I will do next year. I bought an apartment with the assistance of the NDIS, and I'll be living independently, and being able to cook for myself, clean for myself, be able to get from point A to point B to get to my social activities
Mm. Mm.
with support workers, via the NDIS, to get to my place of work, to get to the gym. You know, these are things that we all have to do, and we all, I think, maybe some take for granted. That
Oh,
there is,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah, that when you've got the opportunity to have work, you've got the opportunity
Mm.
to have a family, you've got the opportunity to have, you know, full access to public buildings. But there are some who don't
Is
have those
one thing that
opportunities.
really bugs the crap out of me, looking at those two aspects. One thing that's annoyed me over the years, having grown up with people with special needs around me, I've seen a lot of what they go through. My sister was a special ed teacher as well, so I heard a lot through that. My experiences with yourself as a friend, and it's like, man, it really bugs me that so many people are living, like, they are working and they're working in high paying jobs, but they're swimming in debt, they're abusing alcohol, drugs, their families, and they're just wasting life and potential and opportunity that a lot of us just don't get or struggle with, whether it's someone with a disability, where there are certain limitations, or depending on your socioeconomic background. And, everyone's got their thing.
Mm.
Everyone's got their thing. Everyone's got their challenge. And this is one thing that really bugs me. Some people really fight their entire life just to get ahead, get in the workforce and be seen for who they are. And then you've got these people who are just wasting it.
Mm.
That really bugs me. And that's part of what I want to get across in these episodes and in the podcast is how to change your life, how to inspire people with disabilities to rise, to face everything and rise. For the more able-bodied people that are wasting their life and their opportunities and not taking advantage of what they've got, rise, face it and rise. Stop facing the fear and running into the bottle, running into whatever your vice may be, whatever your escapism is, and actually take action on all that. And one thing I just love to touch on before we start wrapping things up is some of your personal experiences, whether it's been with the workplace or dating and that kind of stuff, where you feel people have judged you a certain way and how that's affected you as a man.
Mhm. Interesting. I find online dating can be very judgmental,
Mm.
superficial is exactly the word I would use. My background is as a creative writer, so
Mm.
I know how to compose. I like to think I know how to compose pretty well written a profile that highlights and articulates what I represent, what my values are. That I'm passionate about movies and books, and about going to the gym and having amazing Italian food with my friends, and that I love culture and I love family. I think I'm very good at representing those sides of myself that I love to sing as well.
But you've got a great voice too.
Oh, thank you, mate. Appreciate
And you can serenade and cook. Like,
that. I
come
could
on.
do all of that as well.
You're
Um,
a great speaker. It's like, come on. Most men struggle just to speak.
uh,
Speak English clearly, let alone write or be creative or bring a lot of these other aspects to the table. So yes, continue. Sorry.
no, that's okay. That's all good. Yeah, I find though that, with online dating, it's a function of the dating apps, and it's a function of the technological age, internet age in which we live, that people's attention spans are shorter, people are much more time poor, and so won't invest so much time in looking through in reading a well-written profile. Will perhaps maybe look at a picture and see superficial differences. And I don't say that necessarily to disparage. I can actually understand that, because we do live in a world where of so many options, and we also live in a world where
Perception of options.
it's a perception of options.
Yeah. Which is
Exactly.
another episode.
Yeah, perception of options. Exactly. It's a good way of putting it. It's perception of options. But with that perception of options that come with a limitless internet and more opportunity socially and within the workforce that we all have, or that some of us have, there is that perception that, you can maybe bypass or overlook certain physical characteristics that you may not feel are right for you. And everyone has preferences. I understand that. And everyone should have preferences. That's human nature. I sometimes do find that the prevalence to make snap decisions, that swipe right, swipe left culture
Yeah.
is indoctrinated in online dating. And it's that, I believe it also even taps into like dopamine addiction, because it's like
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
the more times you swipe, the more perceived options
Yeah. Hmm.
on the table. And every time you see a new person, you see a new face, you see a new smile, you see a new set of eyes, you see, you know, different body, your brain is getting that stimulus constantly.
Mhm.
And so the same principle applies to, watching TikTok videos. Same principle
Yeah.
applies to watching, you know, binge watching TV. So I do feel that there isn't, to cut a long story short, drilling down into what a person genuinely represents is not something that online dating advocates.
No,
No.
it does not. Because we've had these conversations where at times I know, like, whether it's been because you're in a wheelchair and people's perceptions or assumptions of that. And then for me in the past, it's been because I was under 5'10",
Mm,
or not earning enough, or there's always something people can pick on. There's always something people will just be really superficial about. Not everyone,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
feel like it's a really good time to start thinking about broadening our minds and perceptions
Mm,
and looking beyond that superficial level. Because at the end of the day, and you touched on this, that everyone just wants to be loved and accepted for who they are, right? And seen for who they are.
absolutely.
And it's like you've got people out there who know how to handle adversity, that have resilience, that are going to be there, whether it's in a relationship or in the workforce, that are going to be there through the hard times and can actually navigate that and bring a lot of clarity, different perceptions, a broader
Trust
scope.
and loyalty as well.
Yeah, all these things that come into leading a more meaningful life. And I feel like I want people to start opening up and looking beyond, because there are so many people who are incapable of that, who seem to be able. but they're actually not that able in taking care of themselves or keeping their life together, So
I'm not going to say incapable. I'm not going to say incapable. I think everyone is capable. I feel that society sometimes puts the blinkers on people, though.
yeah,
I
okay.
think
That's a great way to put it.
being a bit more self-awareness is
Mm,
the key. And so challenging assumptions, challenging
yeah,
preconceptions,
yeah,
uh, challenging stereotypes. Uh,
yeah,
we can all look at, you know, a video. Like I'll use personal example in where I go to the gym and where I work.
yeah.
People would sometimes say to me, "Oh, you have a disability, so therefore you must know what other people with disabilities go through." No,
Mm,
the answer to that is no, because every human being, regardless of disability or not, is their own person. And
yeah,
so I'm really blessed and fortunate that where I go to the gym with other people with disabilities, people with other neurological conditions, people with degenerative disabilities who won't live a normal lifespan, people who have, you know, missing limbs, amputees,
mhm,
vision impairment, all the spectrum of disability.
yeah,
I've gotten to know their story. I've gotten to know who they are as people
yeah,
because we all have differences,
yeah,
but it's finding what connects us
yeah,
that defines our relationships, whether that be within the workforce or whether that be socially, whether that be in a romantic relationship,
yeah,
finding those connections, seeking specifically having the awareness to take off the blinkers for a moment, just for a moment, and think, if I get to know this person, what opportunity will I have to connect with what that person represents, what that person values, what that person contributes,
yeah,
the
yeah,
very common threads that unite all of us.
yeah. That's awesome. And I think that's a perfect place just to wrap this up, John. That is so eloquent and so succinct. I absolutely loved hearing you speak today. Thank you very much for bringing your insights. I know we could just go on for so long, and I'd love to have you back on in the future, which we've spoken about before,
Hmm.
and look at different things because we've just touched the surface today.
Oh, absolutely.
There are other areas I would love to go into with you in the future, but thank you so much for being here. You know how much I love and appreciate you as a
Likewise, man. I
friend.
really do.
Thank you. And I hope that people watching and listening got a lot from this. Have a listen to it again. If there are any further questions or things you'd like John and I to talk about in the future, get in touch with me through the websites, the social media, or the podcast channels. And let me know because we'd love to continue this conversation and open people's minds. So thank you once again, and we'll see you next episode.
Just a friendly reminder that what we discussed today does not constitute personalized advice. If you're planning on making significant changes to your life, creating a pathway suited to your specific needs and goals is recommended. Also, if you have any questions or topics you would like me to cover on future episodes, please get in touch via social media or through the website. And thank you again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.